Hello, this is day 7 of my summer CSS challenge, and today I'm going to create a nav bar. Responsive, of course. So let's get started. So right off the bat, I went ahead and set up the HTML document, as always, linked up the style sheet, and put in a couple stuff in the body and the CSS style sheet to just see if everything was properly linked up. Once everything was properly linked up, I went ahead, stepped into the HTML, and set up a little bit of a header where I'd be creating the overall nav bar. Inside the header, I set up a little bit of a div for the site title that I would use as pretty much a stand-in for a logo, so that I'd have something that was like the company name and a little subtitle for whatever company and subtitle that someone would have a website for. And from that point on, I just used that as my pretty much logo. After that, I set up a little bit of a nav bar using an unordered list and some links in the list items. And I just set that up so that I could use that for the actual links that would guide to wherever else in the website we needed that to go to. From there, I stepped into the CSS. As you can see here, I set the body color, I set the font family, grabbed a couple things from Google Fonts, as you can see me doing over here. I put those links inside of the HTML specifically before the style sheet that I wrote was loaded in, so that all of the fonts would be available by the time that I used them. At that point, I decided that I wanted to have a background of the color white within the header that spanned the entire length of the screen, so that we had like a white and antique white sort of contrast right there. From there, I decided to use Flexbox for the overall contents of the header, including the company name / subtitle icon, as well as the links on the nav bar. So that way, since I set it up in Flexbox, it would be very easy to switch it over to a vertical layout for smaller screens and make it easier to access that way. At that point, I started using borders to actually figure out exactly where the padding and the margin was coming from for a bunch of different things. And I found this to be a really helpful technique for just learning, because this way it kind of shows you visually and I don't have to keep switching back between DevTools and my actual CSS. I could see exactly where all the margin and padding was coming from, and it was just much easier that way. From here, I decided to create another div for like a sort of container so that the company name and the links wouldn't spread out to the far reaches of the sides of the screen for much wider screens, so that I could kind of restrict the width to a certain maximum amount. So I set up a container and then like a container header modifier class so that all of the flex items would still behave properly. I moved all of those width and max width properties to the generic container class, as you can see me doing over here, and I kept the specific header items inside of the header container modified class so that everything that was previously in the header stays in the header but is still contained. At that point, I decided to set the cursor to a default when it was hovering over the company name and the subtitle, because I didn't want that to be like misleading. I don't want it to be interactable as text. I just want it to be an icon. So I set that, and once I set that, I decided to have a little bit of hover and transition effects on the links. So I used a bottom border as well as transition for like about 1/8 of a second with the ease function to animate the little underlines on the links for each of the home, contact, and about links. At that point, I decided to set up media queries so that it would be responsive for slightly smaller screens. I decided to set my first media query at around 690 pixels so that everything would shift to the bottom of the logo after it dropped below 620 pixels, and I set up another section with the same media query within the typography section as well as the layout section, so that I could center everything and properly space everything out. Here you can see me playing around a little bit with the margin and padding for the links, and trying to space them out so that they looked appropriately wide while still not being overshadowed by the company logo too much. From there, I decided to set up everything so that it would be properly center aligned once it got to that position, and then once the center aligned worked out, I decided to set up a second set of media queries so that it would stack one on top of each other for the actual links as well when we got to even smaller screen sizes such as 390 pixels, as you can see me doing right here. Very nice. This is very nice. Yep. So it's very responsive, it works across several devices, and there we go. I think that's a wrap. So this will be my submission for day 7. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.